Thank you for tuning in to the Leadership Forum, a space where you will hear perspectives from global industry executives on human ingenuity and how they catalyzed it to unlock value and realize their organization's true potential. We will keep it real. We will hear what's worked well and learnings from instances where things could have worked better. I'm your host, Saquib Vali, partner at SpyderWorks and explorer. Say hi to the future, the fast-growing community highlighting the human side of ingenuity. And may I please request the four panelists, Steve Rhone, CEO of Western Forest, please join me on stage. Laura Salisbury, CEO of Nucleus Independent, please. Paula Cruickshank, Senior Vice President, BDC, Ontario. And Eli Browne, Director of Sustainability for Sobeys.
Thanks.
Please.
Is it on?
Yes.
All right. Thank you all for taking time out of your really busy schedule. So this is absolutely fantastic. Now, what I just did was introduce each one of you with a name and a title. Boy, you guys are way more than a name and a title. And I don't think I will do justice, and I don't think everyone wants to listen from me. Why don't we take it from here, where each one of you just introduce to the audience and tell us a bit about yourself briefly. At the end, please do let us know one lesser-known fact that will make you discovered by everyone here. Steve, why don't we hit it off from you?
Great, thanks, Saquib, and pleasure to be here on this panel with all these other professional people and share a little bit of wisdom, hopefully, with all of you. Western Forest is a wholesale distributor and remanufacturer of lumber and plywood. We're based here in Mississauga. We have operations throughout North America. The business origin goes back to 1953, so this is our 70th year in business, and it's been an incredible journey. I joined the company in 1987 as a 17-year-old kid, piling lumber and sweeping the floors, and the journey over the last 36 years has been through every part of the organization, either hands-on or managerially responsible for. So it's been a great experience and a great learning opportunity. In terms of something to share about myself, maybe that not everybody knows, I'll probably share a few personal anecdotes for some of the other questions here around resilience. So I'll save some of that for later, and we'll learn more. But I like old cars, in particular stuff from the 60s and 70s, the American muscle car era, and I have a small collection at home that I get to enjoy for a few hours on warm, sunny days that happen 3 or 4 times a year.
Welcome, Steve.
Thank you.
Laura?
Hi, everybody. Again, really, really excited to be on this panel today. So my name's Laura. I am the CEO of Nucleus Independent Living, which is we deliver in-home health care to vulnerable seniors and to adults living with physical disabilities. I've been in healthcare for about 20 years. I've been with this organization for about 3 years. I've learned a lot through COVID, and so I will likely allude to some of that in my comments. I think the impact that we make for people every day is really to help them age as gracefully and with high dignity in their homes. That usually keeps us really focused on our I'm going to say our strategy, our vision. I think for me personally, I've had the opportunity to learn from so many amazing leaders, and I always feel like I never stand alone. So I'm always so grateful for the leadership journey, for the position that I get to be put in. I always think about my daughter in this regard, where I'm trying to grow somebody who's really strong and to believe in herself, whichever way she points her. And so I was just so enthused by Kim's chat this morning. And I think, like when we go to talk about resilience today, I think my overarching is like be true to yourself, and then I think you'll always find the way. So really excited. Thank you.
Nice. Lesser known fact.
I always forget something. This is me. lesser known fact, if anybody is starting a band, I'm happy to play the accordion with you.
Paula, over to you.
Thanks, Saquib. So I'm Paula Cruickshank. I'm with Canada's Business Development Bank. We accompany entrepreneurs on their journey. Really, our purpose is to empower the dreamers and doers to build a better tomorrow for all. So that's what we're working on collectively with our financing and advisory services. I would say I was thinking about resilience quite a bit, and just thinking about what we've been talking about this morning. I think that if you want to know about me, I thrive in chaos. That's one of the things that I love. And I would say my lesser known fact is that by the time I was 25, I had lived and worked in 5 different continents. So that's what I bring to the table.
Ellie.
Hey. Good morning, everybody. My name is Eli Browne, Director of Sustainability at Sobeys, Sobeys Inc. We are the second largest grocery retailer in the country. We operate grocery brands such as Sobeys, of course, Safeway, Freshco, Foodland. We're coast to coast in all 10 provinces. I have the distinct honor, pleasure, and hectic schedule of managing and leading our sustainability strategy at Sobeys, which touches on key topic areas like climate action, plastics and packaging, food waste, sustainable and ethical sourcing. Those are the things that fill my days and definitely keep us busy with the national team that I lead. A lesser known fact about me, when I was 10 years old, I wanted to be a marine biologist. And that took me all the way to the University of Guelph to study marine biology. Clearly, that's not what I'm doing right now. But it does just show that once upon a time, I had the love of nature and animals that still really drive me today in the work that I do. So.
And when you take plastics out of the ocean, that helps marine biology.
That's right. It's all connected.
It's all connected. It's all one connected world. The theme for today is resilience. And in case we haven't quite woken up to that, the experience and resilience can be very personal, with personal stories. It can be about a team that you're working on. It could be in the products and services that you promise to your consumers and customers, right? And each one of you is a leader in your organization. So why don't we try and get your leadership take, and whoever wants to go first, please go ahead and chime in. What's your leadership take on resilience? How do you cultivate it? How do you nurture it? How do you make it part of the DNA of the organization, right? So whoever wants to go first.
I can go.
Go.
I'll just jump in there. I wanted to share a story about leadership. And one thing that Saquib said when we were preparing for this panel really resonated. So I thought I would bring it back to the story that I wanted to tell. And it was about the challenge that efficiency can sometimes be to resilience. And my job, I like to call myself a banker, but the truth is I mostly work with people who are bringing support and resources to entrepreneurs. So people is an incredibly important part of our business. We've got 33 business centers across Ontario. We're trying to support Ontario's numerous and diverse entrepreneurs every day. That takes a lot of energy. And over the last several years, our organization had been driving for more and more efficiency in how we do things. We're a Crown corporation. We pay a dividend to the bank or to the government every year, and we're very proud of that. But the drive to efficiency that started a few years ago continued for the first part of the pandemic. And as people started moving around and leaving the organization, including some of our more tenured leaders, some of those changes needed to happen, others were unanticipated. We basically started merging a number of those business centers across large geographies. Of course, during the pandemic, we could do that. And so we put together business centers as far apart as Barrie and Vaughan. We put together all of Northern Ontario instead of having someone in Sudbury and someone in Thunder Bay. We put together Peterborough and Durham. So very significant geographies, North York and Scarborough. And we also suffered a loss of our talent. I think everybody moved around quite a bit. Some of those folks have come back, but others are new to our organization. And with so many new people, our leaders were stretched to the breaking point, and it became very, very difficult. As we're coming out of the pandemic, one of the things that we're doing is reinvesting in that leadership. And it's been amazing. Over the past year, we were able to put in 5 new leadership positions and break up those amalgamated business centers. We've got people living and working in their neighborhoods, which is more akin to what we want to do in communities. And we've been able to put a ton of resources into the leadership development. A lot of these leaders were our high-performing account managers a couple of months ago. So they've got a leadership journey ahead of them, but we're there to accompany them. And I think because those leaders are the primary place for development of their teams, it's a really important investment. So I just wanted to share that.
That's great. That's great. And you know what? We'll stick to BDC for just a little longer, right?
Sure.
So, if I would just think about one of the things that you said was the BDC is the entrepreneur's bank, right? And that's amazing in how you go about serving. And they don't have to be small. Some of them are large corporations, but they are entrepreneurs' bank. Now, the landscape of entrepreneurship is changing. The landscape of Canada is changing, right? So it's not just the entrepreneurs that are coming in, but also the businesses that they're serving to is changing. In that uncertain time of all of these changes, right, how do you work with your entrepreneurs in order to build resilience, not just in your teams, but in the people you serve?
Absolutely. So one of the most important things to us is that we have folks in our business centers that represent the communities they serve. So whether that's a newcomer community, members of the South Asian community, black employees, there's folks from the LGBTQ community, all of these various groups, Indigenous or Indigenous employees, all of these groups, we want to make sure that they're represented so that they can relate with the entrepreneurs that we're serving. So that's one piece of it. The other piece is a close connection. We're working to try and liberate our people at all times so that they can spend more time with entrepreneurs to help them through the difficult challenges that the economy is currently throwing at them. So there's a lot of work that we can do. Sometimes resilience comes out of adversity, and it might be the inspiration for a business. And I've seen businesses, for example, when I was working out west, there was a glass blowing studio that was the brainchild of a woman who had lost her child. Basically, when she was blowing glass, she couldn't think about the grief that was part of her
It was like a
life.
coping mechanism.
It was a coping mechanism.
Which is amazing.
Absolutely. So it is about providing the support to those entrepreneurs so those businesses can be more resilient. And we really do see a connection between new Canadians, people who've come to Canada and had to deal with all the challenges that leaving your community, your homeland throws at you, and the ability to cope with the challenges that businesses throw at you.
So I'm going to pick up 3 things in there, right? So one is the change itself prepares you for resilience, Resilience is a coping mechanism for some, and frankly comes out with great opportunities and great ideas, right? And then the third thing that I picked up in there was you need to create space. And that space primarily comes from in how you're liberating your people in order to have that greater relationship and interaction with entrepreneurs that are out there. Thanks a lot, Paula. Thanks a lot. This is great. Laura, let's go to you, and let's start us off with your leadership take, right, on resilience. How do you think that through?
I lead my company like I lead my family. That's which is not always good. I would say, when I say I learned a lot coming into this organization, and I say 3 years, pretty honestly, just for the tiniest bit of context, you guys know what we've been going through for the last 3 years in the pandemic. And so in the healthcare industry, I don't know if it's resilience or survival, but for a period of time, that's what it actually felt like every day. So when I think about leadership style, and when you don't know what the next, micro step might look like in front of you, I think my advice and my support to my team was, I was building a new team. So we were building a new corporation as well as, dealing with the pandemic. When we did that, my tenets, I would say, that guided myself and the team was all about empowerment. And what I learned about empowerment is I feel really empowered. So I'm going to share that with you. I feel like I can talk about what I want to talk about. I can use the words that I want to use to talk about it. I can share my vision. I can share my audacious ideas. I feel really empowered to do all of these things. What I learned in this journey, though, is that what I might think is a right of empowerment every person doesn't actually feel that. And so my leadership in this regard was, how do you enable people to have confidence to be empowered? And this is a really tricky thing when you are working in an uncertain environment, when you actually don't know what the next step is. So I would say, earlier in the day you guys heard it, like I've got your back. That is a really important thing for a team, to know that they can make mistakes. We consider ourselves and talk about us being a learning organization. It implies high curiosity. It implies that I don't know everything as a CEO. And, I have some of my team here today. We're highly collaborative. They know that I stay really close to the front line. And so there's like a credibility factor that I'm happy to call BS on any day of the week. And they know that from me directly. So I think when I think about supporting them, it is, how do you create a safe environment, how to create resilience, right? Because really they need to be able to make their own mistakes. I'm not a micromanager by design. What it also means is that when I talk about empowerment, we have a workforce that is, for all intents and purposes, working alone every single day over thousands of visits a year. You can't underestimate how much the front line actually needs to be empowered to be able to safely deliver care, to be able to make decisions in the moment, and to not be undermined. And so I think so much of what I've learned is having someone's back really helps them grow into what I think is every position in my company, and I say almost bar none, is intended to be leader full. So we're not growing the sheep is kind of how I think of it. That's
true. And the places I'm going to pick on here specifically is have people's back, yes, but the insight in there is empowerment given needs to be received, right? And that receipt part is just as important. As leaders, we need to think about how do we do that, and building the confidence is great. I'll double click on just one thing because I know some of the stuff that you do, Laura. Sure. It's funny. But specifically, right now we're going through a massive change. in healthcare, in the environment where we're moving from the local health integration networks to what we would now call Ontario Health Teams, LINs and OTS for short. And your organization is always ready, right? They are just always ready. What specifically do you do to make them so ready for such change? And that they do that with a smile.
A lot of closed doors, not always smiling. No, that's not true. I actually have a pretty smiley team. I'm usually the one who's not smiling, so maybe it's that. But I think I think what we've learned is healthcare is nothing if not adaptable. We're kind of dealing right now with like all-time HHR, like Health Human Resources, for any of you who might not know the acronym. Right, lots of people exiting the healthcare industry. I'm no longer interested in healthcare. So think about how deeply that might impact someone. This team is a team, so I might actually start there when I talk about resilience. It's a team not only that trusts each other really deeply, it is also, and so that creates a lot of can-do. And, I think when we talk about the sort of the why, I ask the 5 whys, 17 whys, my team will say that's actually probably the only question I really ask. But I think in creating this team to be resilient is that historically it was a bit of the hero complex in healthcare. So it was like this sort of individual approach, and so you can be resilient to an extent. But I think in normalizing what is now a crisis has really elevated this group to rely and trust each other and each other's instincts. So I think it's that it's not all written down, and we're having to sort of navigate this elegantly. And I think for us, the biggest gain we've had is we just have a lot of credibility. So because we are the can-do and we want to collaborate, and that is evident in, if anybody has any time to read our 88-page annual report, it's the team that wants to do a lot. And so I don't have to teach them aspiration, I don't have to teach them ambition. It's what they want to do. I just have to corral it.
No, and I think there are two things that are key over there. One is not everything has to be written down, can also be an opportunity, right? And just the fact that therefore you don't have to teach because they're all learning. Everyone's learning on the fly, so that in itself is an opportunity. That's brilliant. Ellie, we'll move on to Sobeys, 1,600 stores, second largest retailer in Canada, part of Empire, which is 131,000 employees, which is second largest employer in Canada, private company employer in Canada. Obviously, that size and scope has its own challenges. Within that, having to drive a sustainability agenda, I'm sure, comes with its own set of responsibilities, right? And you spoke about plastic and plastic waste. You spoke about food waste. You spoke about the net zero impact plan, right? So give us your assessment on that size and scope, driving that sustainability agenda. Give us some thoughts on how do you go about doing that?
Yeah, thank you. And it's refreshing to hear from someone else kind of put it in those terms, just how big the company is, but the impact that we can have. And I will talk about resilience in some of our activity from the perspective of one of the major initiatives we've done over the last few years, which was the elimination of single-use plastic checkout bags from our stores, which we announced in 2019 before the pandemic, and did it in January 2020 with our Sobeys banner. We all know what happened soon after January 2020. So I would like everyone to sort of think about, your classic SWOT analysis, strength, weakness, opportunities, threats, right? When you're thinking about a project and you kind of list out all these things, and threats are these sort of external things that happen, you want to list it out, and they're likely unlikely to happen, but they could have major impact when they do happen. And you might think of a few things and maybe have some mitigating factors across those threats. Well, when I started Sobeys at the end of 2019, we were in the process of beginning to, planning for the elimination of single-use plastic checkout bags. And just to give you guys an order of magnitude in terms of, well, how many bags are we talking about across our full network, so all the different Sobeys banner stores, it amounts to about 800 million bags per year that we ended up taking out of circulation. And so getting that started in our Sobeys banner, as you know, we announced we announced it in 2019. We began the elimination in 2020, January 2020. And going back to that SWOT analysis, when you think about, well, what are all the things that could possibly happen, right? That are unlikely to happen, but could possibly happen. I mean, could you be like a railway strike and blockades, maybe supply shortages? Why don't we throw a pandemic in there where everyone's freaking out about everything reusable and wants to go back to single use? Those are all the things that we experienced in the first 3 months of the elimination. And I will say the first wave of the pandemic, internally, in terms of having a commitment like that, and then you have this global event happening across the world, there was a lot of misunderstanding, misinformation, a lot of uncertainty about what would happen. And in those early initial months, there were other retailers that had stopped people from bringing reusable bags into their stores. And yet we remained steadfast. And in the face of a lot of uncertainty, internal conversations was, we will let the science lead us. And if it shows that reusable bags, are somehow, have a negative impact on people's health, then we will, change accordingly. It was a difficult decision to make in light of, as I said, a lot of misinformation in those first few months. But it showed me something in terms of resilience. Our CEO kept that promise. We had made a commitment. We did it for environmental reasons. There's a lot of uncertainty swirling. We're not entirely sure what exactly is going to happen, but we're going to stay committed until we know otherwise. And for a big organization, which, obviously reputationally, you take a bit of a risk that way. But I think what it showed me was the importance of having that North Star, that we've made a commitment, we're going to stay to it. But pivot if we need to, but stay committed. And I think that's what it takes to do this type of work: bold leadership, commitment, reporting, storytelling. But to me, that was a good example of resilience, which is, really about staying true to what your core value is, what your objective is, and executing accordingly.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I think, I would say that there are two things that I pick up. One, if you've got many lines on your SWOT under threats, think about a time where all of them can come together, right? Okay, got that. Understand. And then I think you're absolutely right. If one area of resilience is, if you've got a North Star, then let that be what helps you decipher between what's noise and what's a signal, right? And if there's a signal, pivot for sure. But if there's just noise, then the North Star will keep guiding you through it. So thank you, Eli, for doing that. Steve, we'll round it out with you, where Western forestry products, coming out of the pandemic and all of that, but even otherwise, it's got uncertainty on both sides, the demand side and the supply side, right? But if I'm not mistaken, Western Forest has been best managed company in Canada. How many times now? How many years now in a row?
I think we're on our 9th year in a row.
9th year. Okay, so clearly there's something in there which says Western Forest is a very well managed company. How do you get to stay well managed while you've got uncertainties both on the supply side and on the demand side, right? And as you're doing that, that's a very specific example, but do give us your leadership take to kick us off.
Sure. So I think resilience is a muscle that you can exercise, and I think it comes from obviously being able to overcome the obstacles that get thrown in front of you, but having the right kind of team to figure out how to solve problems. Laura touched on it when I was talking about people being empowered. If you can have an empowered team that knows how to deal with what's in front of them, they can overcome a lot. And I think you have to lead by example, so you demonstrate what resilience looks like. And so I guess the little story I'll give you is my life story in a timeline for a snapshot in 2 minutes or less. But I was born into a good circumstance. I had two professional parents that allowed us, to have nice things in life, to travel, etc. That relationship fell apart between my parents when I was 10 or 11 years old, and it ended up in a broken home with two divorced parents that were bitterly fighting with each other. At 12 years old, I was moved halfway across the country with my siblings and my mother, who then went to work and went back to school, so was basically not home other than to sleep. 2 years after that, I found out that I was adopted and wasn't actually biologically part of that family, and at 14 years old and a young man in puberty, that didn't land very well. A year after that, I chose to leave that situation. I left my home and went out on my own. A year after that, I was forced to leave school because I couldn't work, go to school, and feed and clothe myself. And a year after that, I finally found a place where I could sort of create a home and start to build a future. I got an opportunity to live with somebody that I had known in my past and work in a place that turned out to be an opportunity to create a career. And all of that there's a lot more to that story, but I only have 2 minutes to share it with you. But all of that is overcoming the obstacles in front of you, making the best of whatever comes next, and choosing to continue moving forward no matter what comes at you. And I believe that is the epitome of resilience, is being able to overcome whatever obstacle comes in front of you. And in order to be successful at doing that, I think you have to have a few things. First, you have to have intense curiosity, which is something that Ken talked about earlier. You always want to learn something new and put yourself in a position to succeed based on continuing to drive yourself forward and get better at whatever it is that you're tackling. The second is you have to be committed to whatever you're doing and do the best at whatever's in front of you all of the time. And you have to have a little bit of courage. And you have to be willing to say yes, even when you don't know what the outcome's going to be. You have to be willing to push yourself and put yourself in uncomfortable positions. So my thing I tell people all the time is we should be comfortable being uncomfortable. And that in itself builds up that resilience muscle for you on a regular basis. So that's kind of my take on resilience in 2 minutes or less.
No, but thanks a lot, Steve. I mean, first of all, thank you for sharing your personal story. We've spoken about some of these things before, but it takes a lot of courage. It shows resilience in having that sort of a conversation with an audience. And I'm sure people over here can learn something from that. So thank you for doing that. Resilience is a muscle, is a great message. So it's not something that you'll get right first time round, but imagine the more you work that muscle, not that you want to have resilience on a regular basis, but yes, if it calls for, then that's exactly where it is. The Say Hi to the Future podcast series is produced by Sonia Romero, edited by Matt Miller, and special effects by Edward Vasquez. Please leave us your thoughts and let us know if there's a guest you want us to have a conversation with. You can find all Say Hi to the Future podcast series on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube.